Chapter 10. The Fourth Worm. Billy ate steadily, grimacing, rubbing his nose, spreading on more horseradish sauce with every bite. Tom bent over him, hissing in his ear. Fish, 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 fish. Billy paused, watching Alan and Joe whispering by the door. He swished the last bite round and round in ketchup and mustard. All of a sudden he said, "That's not fair. They can't act like that anymore. Every time I swallow, they lean forward as if they expect me to kneel over and die or something. And then when I don't, they look surprised and shrug their shoulders and nudge each other." "Come on," said Joe. "Cut it out. We can watch you whenever we want, or however we want. We're just standing over here by the window watching you." "No, you're not," said Billy. "You're whispering and acting as if you expect something to happen every time I swallow." "It's nothing," said Joe. "Forget it. Look, we'll turn around and look at the window while you swallow." "What do you mean it's nothing?" said Billy. "What's nothing?" "Oh, come on," said Alan. "It's just something Joe's father told him the other night. It's nothing." "What? What did he say?" "It'll just worry you," said Alan. "It's crazy. It's nothing. Forget it." Billy tore the napkin away from his throat. "Tell me." "It's nothing," said Joe. "You know how my father is. He's always yelling about something." "Tell me, or it's all off." "Okay, well, look, it's nothing. But the night before last, I was telling Janny about you eating the worms, and my father was on the porch and he heard us. So he threw down his paper and says, 'Joseph.' So I says, 'Yes, Pa?' And he says, 'Have you eaten a worm, Joseph?' And then he grabbed my shoulders and shook me till my hands danced at the ends of my arms like puppets. 'It's for your own good,' he says." So I shuddered it out. "It's not going to do any good if I shake to pieces, is it?" Janny was wailing. My mother was chewing on her apron in the doorway. "Alfred," she cries, "what has he done? Has he hauled down the American flag at the school and eaten it again? Has he—" "So what's the point?" yelled Billy. "Get to your point. What's all this have to do with me?" "I'm coming to it," said Joe, wiping his nose. "But I wanted to show you how important it was. My father nearly killing me and all." He sneezed, and then Alan began to sneeze, and finally they had to hobble off into the horse stalls, hugging his stomach to recover. "Well, anyway," said Joe, wiping his nose again up his Levi sleeve. "So my father told me my mother—" "Oops, sorry." "So anyway," said Joe, wiping his nose again, hitching up his Levi's. "So my father told my mother he thought I'd eaten a worm." "A what?" says my mother, dropping her apron and clutching the sides of her head. "A worm," says my father, nodding solemnly. So my mother fainted, collapsed, all helter-skelter, right there in the doorway. She laid still, her tongue lolling out of her mouth. Her red hair spread out beautifully over the doorsill. So "Will you cut it out?" Billy yelled. "Who cares about your mother? What does this have to do with me?" "I think he's lying," said Tom. "Whoever heard of someone's mother fainting and her tongue hanging out?" All right," yelled Joe, stamping around. All right, now I won't tell. You can die, Billy Foster. You'll have to be carried out of his home. Tom, he'll have to carry you, all by himself. Nobody says to me, 'Who cares about your mother?' All right, I'm going. Alan," he yelled, "they're insulting my mother. I'm going." "Don't," said Alan, running out of the horse stall and grabbing Joe by the shirt tail. "Don't. You gotta tell him. Even your mother'd said so. Mine too, no matter what he said. Ain't it a matter of life or death?" "I won't," said Joe, starting toward the door. Alan pulled him back. "You got to. How long have we known poor Bill? 6, 7 years? For old time's sakes, Joe, because we're all in this once we started kindergarten together. Think of the agony he'll face, Joe. The pain and the blood and the gore." Billy was on his knees by the orange crate, wringing his hands, not daring to interfere. But when Joe glanced suddenly back at him, he whispered, "Please, Joe, for old time's sakes." "Well, will you apologize for insulting my mother?" "I do," said Billy. "I do. I apologize." So Alan and Joe began to sneeze again, and this time had to bend over and put their heads between their legs to recover. Tom, who had been watching him suspiciously, trying to make out what was going on, started to say something. "Shut up," hissed Billy fiercely, turning on him. "You keep out of it." So Joe went on with his story, how his mother had been carried upstairs to her room, how the doctor had come, shaking his head, how his aunt was sobbing, how she pulled down all the shades in their house, how that morning his mother had finally come downstairs for the first time, leaning on his aunt's arm, pale and sorrowful. How? "Yeah," said Tom. "Sure, so why? What does eating worms do with you?" "Nobody will tell me," said Joe, opening his eyes wide. "It's been 3 days now, and nobody will say. It's just like the time that my older cousin Lucy got caught in the back seat of her father's Chevrolet with an encyclopedia salesman. Nobody will tell me why there was such an uproar." He wiped his mouth. "But one thing's for sure. It's worse than poison. Probably." "Crap," said Tom. "Oh yeah?" said Joe. But then he and Alan had another sneezing fit, sprawling helplessly against one another. "Look at them," said Tom to Billy. "They're not sneezing. They're laughing." "Come on, eat the last piece and let's get out of here." "You really think so?" said Billy doubtfully. The sneezing did look an awful lot like giggling. "Sure, look at 'em." Tom gave Alan and Joe a shove. Then they collapsed in a heap, sneezing uncontrollably. Billy watched them. Yeah, sure, they weren't sneezing. They were laughing. Weren't they? "Hay fever," gasped Alan. "Hay fever." "Oh, you never had hay fever before," said Tom. "How about yesterday or the day before? Come on, Billy, open up." So Billy, half believing Tom and half not, glancing doubtfully at Alan and Joe, allowed Tom to poke the last bit of worm into his mouth and leaned him out of the barn. Alan and Joe sat up. "It didn't work," said Alan. Joe began to brush off all the horsehair. "You wait." He wasn't sure. Tom was, but he isn't eating the worms. You wait. Billy's worried. He was before. That's why he said he felt like he was going to throw up. But now he's really worried. Suppose I wasn't lying. Did you see his face when I said my father shook me? I thought his eyes would bug right out of his head." Alan laughed. "Oh, geez." "Yeah, and when you said your mother had fainted?" Joe stopped brushing all the hair off of him. "Except, why'd you laugh so much, for cripe's sake? If you'd kept a straight face, even Tom wouldn't have to guess." "Well, you laughed first. What do you mean?" "Me? I laughed first? I did not." "You did so. You laughed when he yelled at you the first time, and you wiped your nose." They went off through the meadow, arguing.